because look, he's guilty. Our search was legitimate because look, he's guilty. And the judge has to make a decision. Am I going to send this guilty person to prison, or am I going to let him off because of some technicality? And generally speaking, the judges want to send that guilty person to prison. And so over time, over years, if you have thousands of these cases over and over and over again, eventually what ends up happening is that the rules that have to do with who gets searched and why get whittled down because the judges don't see the innocent people. And so what ends up happening is that they have an expanded ability to search innocent people. It's true. I agree. That's an interesting. But the view of the Customs Service is that they don't need a warrant to begin with, right? And so that's the question. So there's this guy, you know this guy. There's an FBI agent, a former FBI agent named Mark Rausch. Is that his name? You know what I'm talking about? Rausch. Rausch's view is that they should be able to boot up your laptop and look at the contents of like what's on your desktop and stuff, but a deeper analysis requires reasonable suspicion. So his view is like a sort of scratching of the surface is okay, but like a deep like analysis requires something more. No, they don't tell them about that shit. No. Exactly. It is bullshit. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's what it's about, you know? Like, it's about those 20 other people who were subject to these searches who were innocent, who had to, you know, go through this process because. Exactly. Exactly. So what ended up so here's the thing. Here's where I'm arguing about this fucking bullshit about particularly offensive. I think their argument is sloppy, and it relates to there's this whole argument that like so a warrant is not required to search a car, and let me explain why. The whole concept is that a car could move to a different jurisdiction. So if you're a Tennessee state cop and there's a car there and you want to search it, you don't have to get a warrant. And the reason is that it takes you time to get a warrant. And during that time, the car could drive to Alabama. Raise your hand if you're interested in the technical analysis of the question of the cars. All right, so listen. The car could drive to Alabama while you're waiting for the fucking judge to write your warrant. So you don't have to get a warrant. You can go ahead and search it immediately. But the standard of suspicion is the same. You still have to have probable cause to search that car. You just don't have to establish it in front of a judge. But if it comes out that you searched that car, you didn't have probable cause, that evidence is ejected. All right? So the standard of suspicion is the same. The bureaucratic process is changed. This court relied on that reasoning to argue that the standard of suspicion should be different for border searches than they are for searches that are not at a border. And that doesn't make any sense. Fundamentally, that's illogical. That's the most clear way that I can explain it. They said that because cops don't have to have a warrant to search a car, border agents don't have to have a warrant to search a laptop. And it just doesn't boil down to that. So I'm going to go to the next slide. That's as clear as I can explain it. It's a complicated subject. Here's the other shoe. Here's the fucked up shit that happened. On May 22nd, the anti-counterfeiting trade agreement leaked. This is an international treaty. And this treaty would enable, according to Canada.com, I don't know if this is true because nobody has seen the text of this treaty. But it hasn't been leaked. But according to this news media organization in Canada, they claim that it would enable border agents to search you for pirated music and pirated software. So if they went through your laptop and they found a bunch of shit on your iPod or whatever that they didn't think you owned, they could detain you and prosecute you for this. That is what this treaty is about. So if this shit goes forward and they're allowed to search you at random, the consequence will be that if you have MP3s on your iPod or your laptop that you do not own, that you could be prosecuted for that. They probably can't search 8-track. Dude, I can't hear a word you're saying. Come up here. The intellectual property law. If you've got fucking... No, I think that there's some reality to what you're saying. I think that if you've got an iPod and they're like, you don't own that, they've got a very weak case. But if you've got something like say, BearShare running on your laptop, and there's an outgoing directory, and you've got a bunch of shit in it, and they find that, then, yeah, they can probably prosecute you for distributing that material. And I think that there's a reality to that. And I think that, how many of y'all run fucking file trading software, peer-to-peer software on your laptop? You're lying! Liars! Liars! Yes, I fucking do. I know you well enough to know. This is... You haven't used that feed. I rest my case. Then you'll win in court after they prosecute you, okay? But it'll suck a lot, okay? So this is this shit the ACLU posted a couple days ago. I'm not sure I entirely buy what they're doing here, but this is their chart. They can perform these border searches not just at the border, but within 100 miles of the border. And it turns out that 2/3 of the United States population lives within 100 miles of the border. This is the border region. We're talking about, all of Florida, all of Hawaii. If you live in Chicago, New York, Washington, fucking Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, you're in the brown region. I didn't make this draft, okay? So Tennessee's, it turns out Nashville's a pretty good place to live. Here's my issue with this. As far as I understand, they cannot use this border search shit on you unless they know that you crossed a border. They can't just pull you over randomly in San Diego and fucking claim it's a border search. They have to have some sort of proof that you, in fact, crossed the border and are still coming from the border to do that kind of search. And the ACLU did not articulate that in this information, and they sort of allege that these searches are occurring without any evidence that you crossed the border before you were searched, and they don't substantiate that allegation, and so I'm not sure that's true. But in any event, they published this graph, and they know more than I do about this shit. Yeah. But if you live in any of these regions, I mean, this is 2/3 of the population of the country. If they can search anybody within this region, they can search 2/3 of the population of the country. Those Canadians are fucking sketchy. Are you a customs agent? I didn't think so. So, what has happened after this ruling that this was constitutional to do? There's been a lot of stuff that's happened. Maybe there was appeal to the Supreme Court. What has actually happened is that it's possible that this case will be submitted to en bloc or review, which means that the Ninth Circuit Appellate Court has ruled that random searches are okay, but that's only a 3-judge panel. They can assemble the entire Ninth Circuit to review that ruling. There's been some discussion of doing that. I don't know what's going to happen. If the entire judge panel refuses to do so, then they'll go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court may or may not accept this as something to discuss. I think they will, and the reason they will is because there's been a hell of a lot of noise and dust that has been kicked up since this ruling was handed down. The Washington Post has reported that there are several law firms that are asking employees to keep 2 laptops, a travel laptop and a stay-at-home laptop. The travel laptop is loaded only with the information required for the trip, and then they come to the United States, for example, with only that information. Is that not fucked up? I mean, when I think of going maybe China, I think perhaps I should only take the information that I need on my laptop because I think someone might search my laptop. But it seems wrong that people coming into the United States are thinking, geez, I better delete my entire laptop and only take the information I need for that trip because I'm worried that the U.S. government might seize that information when I come in. That just conflicts with my understanding of the identity of this country. Jennifer Granick posted advice for travelers. The EFF, and I'll get into that in a minute, the EFF has written an open letter to Congress, and they filed an FOIA suit to learn more about border search practices. The letter they wrote to Congress was to ask for an open hearing. And in fact, that actually did happen. The Senate Judiciary Committee held an open hearing on June 20th, 2008. There was a New York Times editorial on July 10th. Michael Chertoff, I like to call him Michael Jerkoff, he replied to that New York Times editorial in the USA Today on July 16th. And he said travelers only go to secondary screening when there is some level of suspicion, yet legislatures looking into the particular standard for searches would have a dangerous, chilling effect on officers' often split-second assessment of their secondary guesses. So, I mean, this is the thing, like, the whole debate is about whether or not there is some sort of reason to suspect these people. And Jerkoff is saying in the USA Today that there is a reason. So there's no reason for a regulation that requires that there be a reason. That doesn't make any... It doesn't make any fucking sense. So on July 20th, the Center for American Progress set up a website called handsoffmylaptop.org where people could go sort of, I don't know, who's got a fucking cell phone? Handsoffmylaptop.org is a place where you can go sort of indicate your opposition to this. And that information goes straight to DHS. But I think it's actually useful because it's a good way of, how are we doing on time? Is that why you're here? Oh, thank you. Who's got a paper towel? I need a paper towel. On August 1st, DHS published laptop search policies. So here's their policies. Basically, they said, notwithstanding their law enforcement mission, they'll protect your right to be protected from unreasonable search and seizure. Thank you. It's fucking ridiculous. They say this, and then they go ahead and explain that they can pretty much search you without any suspicion whatsoever, and they can retain that data forever and share it with whoever they want. So I don't understand the sentence. I don't understand what unreasonable search they're protecting me from. Their full document goes on to explain how there are no constraints on what they can search and who they can share it from. So what exactly is it that this clause intends to state that they're protecting me from? There's fucking nothing that they're protecting me from. Okay? I'll tell you what argument they could make. Sir? He's better at raising his hand than you are. Sorry. That is an auspicious question, sir, because I have the answer, in fact, right here on this slide. There are three cases where they say they're protecting your civil liberties. In fact, all three of these cases are cases where they're protecting their fucking asses. One of the cases is business information, trade secrets, and the like. There is a possibility that the agent in question could be prosecuted if he searched your laptop, there were trade secrets, and he handed it to a competitor. So they tell their agents to be careful about that kind of information. I'll talk about the third, attorney-client privileged information. If U.S. Customs is in fact prosecuting you, and you happen to go through U.S. Customs checkpoint, and you get selected for secondary screening, and you have emails between you and your lawyer on the laptop, that could undermine their case. And so they ask, that if there's some sort of attorney-client privilege involved, that the agents actually communicate with the legal department at the U.S. Customs Service. But the fact is that if the lawsuit does not involve the U.S. Customs Service, chances are very likely that they'll allow the agent to proceed. So, and again, they're covering their ass, they're covering their legal interests. They are not allowed to open first-class mail, okay? But not if it's a letter that you haven't opened that's in your bag when you're crossing the border, they can open that. It actually has to be in the mail. But for some reason, they can read all the fucking email on your laptop, but they can't open first-class mail that's sent through the mail system because Congress has specifically denied them the right to do so. And those cases that I referenced in the 70s and 80s that had to do with whether or not these border searches are constitutional, they referenced that issue with the U.S. mail. And the people who opposed the all these Supreme Court cases, they're not unanimous. Some judges say yes, some judges say no. The judges that dissented in some of those cases that said no, Customs should not be able to do these kinds of searches, they said, look, the Congress has protected people's mail, for example, from being read when it goes internationally, and if they intended to protect mail, they must have intended to protect this. But those arguments lost, unfortunately, and so that's important. You with your hand up. If you sent it via, this is the issue, you have to send it via first-class mail. It's complicated. As far as, and again, I'm not a lawyer, okay? So don't take this as legal advice. As far as I understand, they have to think it's a letter. If they think it's a letter, they can't open it. If they think it's a package, I think they can open it. And so it's very hard to get if you could find some way, exactly. If you could find some way to package it that it looks like paper, you're cool. But I think if they think it's a package, I think they can open it. But again, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I think it's still labeled as U.S. mail. That's an interesting observation. If it turned out that they were searching it because they thought it was FedEx, they would be fucking fucked. Okay? So that would be bad. Sir? No. There are people in this room who know a lot about that shit. This town runs on medicine. Anybody got a contrary to that? As far as I'm concerned, that's the case. There are no carve-outs for medical information. As far as I understand it, like the actual U.S. Customs policy does not mention HIPAA. It does not mention doctors. I can say that authoritatively. That's true, but I mean, they mentioned these are the exceptions, okay? And one of those exceptions is attorney-client privileged information, but they don't mention doctors. Yeah, it's sort of like the CIA can go through your files, but, sir? Sweet. It actually says telnet. That's great. Big Brother loves you. He does. He cares about you. But unfortunately, his computer was manufactured in 1986. Okay. The next slide. What has happened? Michael Jerkoff did a Wired interview, and Wired asked him, would it allay the suspicions of business community if you had a policy that says that we only search your shit if we have a good reason to do so? And Jerkoff says, that's exactly why, I put the policy on the internet. It's on the web to say that we only do it when you have to put you in secondary. We only put you in secondary. We have a good reason to. Well, that's exactly the opposite of the goddamn policy. And so Senator Russ Feingold, who's a fucking badass, said Secretary Jerkoff's blatant mischaracterization of the DHS policy. I'm sorry, I'm getting so drunk that I can hardly see these slides, but he says contradicts that, the openness and transparency of the issue. Basically, Jerkoff says that we only search you, if we have a reason. But the whole law, the whole debate is about whether or not they have to have a reason. And the fact is that their position is that they don't have to have a reason. And so Feingold's like, fuck you guys. Your whole fucking bullshit is about how you don't have to have a reason. And now you're saying that you do have to have a reason. Well, yeah, that would be great if you actually operated on that policy, but you don't. So some jerk named Russ Knock, fucking Russ Knock, dissed Feingold, and he says, sour grapes and paranoia from someone who can't accept that even the Ninth Circuit ruled that what we're doing is constitutional. Are we 3 years old? Are you fucking that fucking stupid? In my view, and I just did this earlier on, you probably don't remember, but I eviscerated that Ninth Circuit decision because it was based on the idiotic view that let's go back there. What? No, that's in the media. No. I'm sure he's very smart about where he's making the statements. They didn't show up for the hearing. They did not submit comments to the hearing. They did not participate in the Senate hearing about the subject at all. No. That is the press. They said it in the press because they're a bunch of fucking crooks. They're pissed off about this. They claim that this Ninth Circuit ruling where they confuse the concept of a search of an automobile with the search of a laptop is this, which is completely ridiculous, completely unreasonable, and I hope I did a good job of explaining why. If you don't remember, I'll be happy to do it again. They claim that is proof that even the most liberal court in the nation supports their interpretation of these laws, which is completely unreasonable because that interpretation it can be debunked by an idiot like me with no professional legal training, and therefore it should be something that is not even a matter of professional discussion at this level. And so, Russ Feingold, I love you. Thank you for telling the DHS that they can suck your cock. So, the Washington Post on August 13th published an editorial saying reasonable suspicion standard should be written into law. So here's what's happened since then. So the old policy, the threat level, who knows what threat level is on Wired? A handful of you. There's an awesome blog on Wired. It's run by, who knows who Kevin Poulsen is? More of you. If you don't know who Kevin Poulsen is, you're not elite. This is a guy he was like an old school hacker back in the early 90s, and he was kind of a black hat, and he got busted for he hacked into the phone system and manipulated it so that he could win a number of call-in contests at radio shows. And so he got like a couple Porsches and some other shit by fucking up the phone system so that he always won these call-in like radio contests. And then he got busted by the feds. And he went to prison for a while. And since he got out of prison, he's been a reporter for Wired. You know, you might be pissed off at him because he did, in fact, steal a bunch of shit. But at the same time, he's not an idiot when it comes to this kind of thing. Him and his buddy run a blog called Threat Level at Wired, which covers some of these, computer crime and civil liberties issues. And it's a pretty useful blog. You know, and you can take a grain of salt with respect to someone who served time in federal prison for ripping people off, but at the same time, you know, he understands computer security. He's not an idiot. Yeah. They've been doing a good job. So here's an example of something that he did. He looked up the 1986 U.S. Customs Service policy, and they said officers should not read personal correspondence. That's what it said. Officers should not read your diary. The new policy said officers may read your diary. They may read your personal correspondence. And so they called up the U.S. Customs Service, and they said, what the fuck? And the U.S. Customs Service said, you know, this decision to change standards reflects the realities of the post 9/11 environment. And so here's my perspective. Old policy, new policy, same old fucking excuse. There is no articulable anti-terrorism reason for these searches of laptops. And I will debate Michael Chertoff. I will debate whoever you want. You can fucking haul out whoever you want, and I can explain in a very articulate way when I'm not drunk why this has absolutely no relation to any real anti-terrorism. So let's go to the next slide. September 11th, 2008, Representative Loretta Sanchez, a Democrat from California, introduced the Border Search Accountability Act of 2008, which requires additional audit trails for searches, requires privacy and civil liberties impact studies of these laptop searches, requires quarterly reports to Congress about laptop searches, and does not require reasonable suspicion. So, you know, it's not everything that I want. It does not require reasonable suspicion for these searches, but it does create a lot of audit trails and information that are reported to Congress so Congress can at least assess whether or not this is a significant privacy issue for Americans. So I definitely support this piece of legislation. What do you guys think? I'm not doing a good job. Russ Feingold has also produced a bill. It's called the Traveler's Privacy Protection Act. Feingold's bill is much more hardcore than Sanchez's bill. It was supported by Russ Feingold, Maria Cantwell in the Senate, and Adam Smith in the Congress. That's an interesting name for a congressman. Congress. Here's what the law says. Congress finds that the privacy interests of the contents of a laptop computer differs in kind and in an amount from the privacy interests of other closed containers, requires reasonable suspicion to search a laptop and other electronics, requires a warrant to seize electronics. Eh? Yeah. That's awesome. You know, I support that. I have a feeling that Feingold's bill is going to be turned down and that Sanchez's bill is going to be passed. But Sanchez's bill is just a step. And once Congress has enough information about how many people's rights are being violated, then we have a chance to get Feingold's bill passed. But if anyone asks you, I mean, my opinion is you should write your representative and tell them that you support this bill, because I support this bill. Yes, I support Feingold's bill. It's better than nothing. And that's the whole point of this presentation. You're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Dagmar. It doesn't mean shit, but here's the advantages. Here's the reasons why it's better than nothing. The reason it's better than nothing is two. Number one, they can't do it at random. And number two, they can't do it according to a quota. They can't do it to everybody. They have to have a reason. And they can't say we're going to search 1% out of everybody that comes off a plane. because there's 300 people on every plane, so that's 3 people per plane. Okay? 3 people per plane that comes into the country if they're only searching 1%. So if you say reasonable suspicion is required, they have to have an articulable reason why you're different from the crowd. They can't simply say, we're going to search 3 people off of every flight. And so the amount of searches is going to decrease, and the amount of the rationalization has to increase. It's better than nothing. I agree with you. The fucking reasonable suspicion standard is bullshit, and we should push further. But, this is a battle in a war, okay? And we have to at least get on top of this hill before we can fight down from it. And that's my perspective. Do you see what I'm saying? So, how can I protect myself? Encryption. So Granick says, one federal court ruled that you have a Fifth Amendment right to refuse to reveal your encryption key to the cops. And here's the counter-argument. The counter-argument is that your password itself is not incriminating, only the content it protects. And so they can compel you to reveal the password. That should always be your password, according to this particular theorization. So, the other thing is that agents can detain you. They can seize your laptop. They could deny you entry into the United States, although this is harder to do if you're a United States citizen. Is there anyone in the room who's not a United States citizen? Okay, so that's not relevant. But anyway. What about TrueCrypt? How many of you know about TrueCrypt? Here's my thing about a lot of people think like, I'm running TrueCrypt, so the customs agent will never find my secret hard drive. Here's my perspective. Customs agents are computer savvy. There's some smart motherfuckers that work for customs. Don't try to fuck with them. TrueCrypt can be detected even in travel mode by inspecting the registry. There's a registry key that's there that relates to your TrueCrypt partition, and they can search for that registry key. And TrueCrypt can be, there's a bootloader that you can get. Even if you have like that hidden operating system mode, there's still a bootloader, and they can detect that bootloader. So they can tell that you're running TrueCrypt. And you can be, and they'll be like, well, why don't you show me the hidden partition? And you can be like, there's no hidden partition. And they can be like, I'm detaining you until you show me the hidden partition. And you'd be like, okay, because you don't have a choice. They will fucking detain you, and then when they catch you in the light, they can charge you with obstruction. Look at fucking Martha Stewart, You fucking Miss Muffin got fucking sent to federal prison for like 6 months, not because she did anything wrong, but because she lied to the cops. All right, so you're gonna end up in this situation. It's not gonna work out well. Like I'm saying, as long as they don't find out, they don't find out. But they're not stupid, and they might find out. And if they find out, you're fucked. What? There may be things that you can do. This is my third point on the slide. There might be steganography that will work. You might be able to disconnect your hard drive, and it might be work. But, if it doesn't work, you're fucked. Christopher Shahogian says the same thing that Daniel recommended earlier. He says, wipe your laptop, encrypt your data. To be honest, these data points should really be reversed. You should really encrypt your data and put it on a file server before wiping your laptop. Encrypt your data and put it on a network file server in an encrypted form. Wipe your laptop, travel. At the destination, download that shit off the internet, decrypt it, do whatever you want to do, and then wipe it again and upload it to the file server again, and then travel again with this empty laptop. And, this is not very practical for most of y'all to do. All I'm saying is that, like, this thought experiment proves that this policy is stupid. If you were really, really serious about fucking with the United States, this is what you would do, and this whole laptop searching policy would not do you a damn bit of good, right? What, Dagmar? They can take your laptop and hold it for a while. Here's my view. Why don't you advocate that the fucking laws change? All right? We should not be afraid to travel overseas with our laptops. Who's with me? I agree. Yeah. We should get the policy right. Some bad people will use TrueCrypt. Here's the thing. I don't like these tools that enable people to get away with crime. In my view, we don't want to enable people to do bad shit. We want to create a policy that enables innocent people to live their lives without fearing prosecution by the government. And here's my thing. You guys hang out on the internet and you end up arguing with people about shit. And so I want to arm you with arguments so that when you end up in debates with some fascist asshole who thinks that every laptop needs to be searched, you understand how to respond to the stupid bullshit that he's spouting. And so when the Fourth Amendment says no unreasonable searches, it means no searches without reason. Okay? You need to have a reason to search. Otherwise, it's unreasonable. Doesn't that make sense? There is no ancient right of the sovereign to search people at the border without reasonable suspicion. These case precedents are sketchy, and they're from the 70s and early 80s. As I previously stated, there's this leap of logic where they go from the ancient law in the 1789 said reasonable suspicion was required. It was not until 1985 that they said we can search without reasonable suspicion. That's fucking bullshit. The ancient law said reasonable suspicion is required, and that is the way it should be today. Random searches are inefficient anyway. We have limited resources to search people, and we ought to search the people that we have a reason to suspect might have committed a crime instead of searching people at random. That's not an effective way to do law enforcement. Computers are not just like luggage, all right? When you have a suitcase, you put stuff in the suitcase that you need for your trip, but your laptop contains all of your personal information by default. And if you want to travel outside the country with it and you're worried about it getting searched, then you have to remove personal information from it. That's a completely different thing, and it's not really reasonable. It's not comparable. Here's John Perry Barlow. I said previously that the customs agents might be able to detain you if you refuse to reveal your password. John Perry Barlow said, you can have my encryption algorithm when you pry it from my cold dead fingers. And that is that is an old, this is before PGP was widely used. This is an old quotation. But the reality is that there's a lot of people who are like, fuck y'all, I'm not giving you my password. And that's a very reasonable sentiment. And I have a caveat to that, which is don't be a dick to your customs agent. When I gave were any of you in my talk at Dragon Con when I gave the same talk? A couple of you. There was actually a friend of mine who was dating one of my former roommates who was a customs inspector who was in the fucking talk. Okay? And Tammy is a perfectly reasonable person. And she's searching a laptop, she's just doing her job. She is just like you and I, and she has a job where she works at the airport in Atlanta, and she searches people coming into the country. That's her job. She works for the U.S. Customs Service. And it was useful to have her in the room because she added some perspective to the discussion. But the bottom line is that if she's searching your shit, she's just doing her job. That's her job. She's not responsible for U.S. government policy. So don't fuck with your customs agent. I don't care about grammar. No, you're right. There are assholes who are customs agents. It's not. It's not. And there are assholes who are customs agents, but even if your customs agent is an asshole, I don't think you should be a dick to them. Because you know what? They can make your day suck. And it is in your interest to make them feel like you are not a good reason for them to be an asshole. Okay? After, later on, if you need to, get the ACLU to sue the shit out of them. But in the situation when you're dealing with them, don't fucking cause a problem. Yes, it's not strategically a good idea. And generally speaking, I hope that most of them are not assholes. Tammy is not an asshole. And if you fly into Nashville, you might be flying into Atlanta if you're coming from Europe, and you might end up dealing with Tammy. She's not an asshole, but she might search you because that's her job. And the bottom line is she's not who you want to argue with. You want to argue with the Senate. You want to argue with the Congress. You want to write them a fucking letter and tell them that their policy sucks. That is the layer at which this argument needs to be occurring. People smuggle information over the internet. This is an important point to make to some fascist asshole who's telling you that the only way to stop terrorism is to search people's fucking laptops. Nobody gives a fuck about laptops. Al-Qaeda has websites, and that's where you get your Al-Qaeda information. You get it off the web. How many of you have seen an Al-Qaeda website? It's an interesting question. That shit's out there, man. If you're fucking like an internet ninja, you know, really. Anyway, all I'm saying is that nobody is coming into this country by smuggling shit on a laptop, okay? And this goes back to Christopher Shahogian's point. If I fucking put it on a website and encrypt it, it's not vulnerable to custom search. So why would I put it on a laptop on clear text and fly in with it? There is a single case that I am aware of where an actual terrorist was busted by U.S. Customs Service by searching a laptop. There's one single individual who was busted this way. He was already flagged as a terrorist in their system. He was not randomly selected. They had reasonable suspicion. He had videos on his laptop of IEDs exploding in Iraq. I mean, he was a questionable individual and has questionable shit on his laptop. But they looked at him for a reason. It wasn't just randomly they selected him. They knew that they wanted to look at him. And that's, in my view, the point. Irrespective of whether you think it's important for a civil liberties reason or for an efficiency reason, you know, randomly searching people is not the right way to do this. We need to figure out how to target our resources toward the people that are a threat. And fuck that shit, you know? I mean, that's my view. Fuck that shit. You know, I don't think that's a valid rationalization. So contract your senators and Congress people, because that's where the argument needs to be had and not at the goddamn Nashville airport, all right? Be respectful. No one likes a jerk except apparently my girlfriend, and I can't explain that. Tell them customs should not be allowed to perform searches of laptops and other electronics without reasonable suspicion. Tell them you want a privacy impact assessment. Those words are very important. The Congress wants information about what the risks are associated with allowing this policy to continue. And if you tell them that you want that information too, they're more likely to act on it. You know, how many people are being searched? How much equipment is being seized? We don't know. All we have is that ACT study. You know, what's happening to that information? Tell them reasonable suspicion should be required to perform an intrusive search at the border. I think it should be. I think that the founding fathers thought that it should be. And so it doesn't matter. They had boats. And you know what? In 1789, reasonable suspicion was required to search your ass if you came in off a boat. So you tell me why the Supreme Court said it's not required today. Doesn't make sense to me. Go to handsoffmylaptop.com. Go to handsoffmylaptop.com. You can fill out a simple form. It sends a message to DHS that says that you're concerned about this. the more people. This is effective. Okay, when this started, and I went and talked. I was the first person to actually publicly announce this at the Hackers on Planet Earth, in New York City. And just a few weeks after we publicly announced this, and I won't tell you that I was the source of most of the people who signed up on this website. The guys who run this website are very well connected, and there are a lot of people who signed up, had nothing to do with me. But I was the first public announcement of this, and after it went public, a few weeks later, DHS actually published their policies for laptop searches at the border, and that was very important. And that was absolutely a result of people entering the form on this website. So this continues to tell DHS that this is a concern that people have, and they're not assholes. Just like I said, your customs agent, they're not trying to screw you. They're just doing their job. And if you tell them that this is something that you're worried about, then they will spend more time thinking about it. It's important. Sir.
Hey, yeah, absolutely.
Well, what's fucked up as far as I'm concerned is that as far as these laws are concerned, if I fucking, email it to you and you're in Europe, there are all these rules that constrain their ability to surveil the contents. But if I come in off a laptop, and I physically carry it, they're saying that we can search it and we don't even need reasonable suspicion. I don't understand why it's very carefully protected if I send it over the network, but if I carry it in a sneaker net, it's something they can search. That's unreasonable. Here's my last slide. This is my last slide. I spent some time thinking about that. This is something that people kind of wrestle with that's sort of fundamental to this question. It's like, why is privacy important? Why, if you don't have anything to hide, what's the problem? Why don't you let the government read your email if you're not a terrorist? I mean, what is the issue? Are you some sort of criminal? Do you have something, wrong? I'll talk about that later. Here's my view. Here's the thing: if a criminal is someone who knows that they're up to no good, they know that they could go to prison for what they're doing, and so therefore they have to be very careful about everything that they do. They have to think about every interaction they have. They have to look over their shoulder. They live in fear. And they ought to live in fear, and that's what we intend. We intend that they live in fear because we don't want them to do that in the first place. We want them to decide not to commit those actions at the outset because the consequences are so severe. But if you create this regime where everyone is subject to the same kind of scrutiny that people who are guilty of serious crimes are subject to, then that puts everyone in the same shoes that criminals are put in. And so everyone, regardless of whether they're really innocent or guilty, has to think about everything that they do. Could this action be misinterpreted by a prosecutor? Could the thing that I'm doing be viewed as suspicious by someone who doesn't understand it, who doesn't put it in context? And so innocent people are forced to look over their shoulder, are forced to live their life under the magnifying glass of suspicion that we want criminals to live in. And so we put the general populace under the same sort of suspicion that we only today reserve for criminals. And that is destructive to our society, I think. That fundamentally undermines the notion of a free society. It makes people, it makes people decide that they're not going to do something that they want to do, which is perfectly innocent, because they're afraid that the people who are watching them, who are spying on them, might misinterpret that action as being as implying some sort of criminal activity that they didn't participate in, and that is really what we're afraid of. So if that is why the Fourth Amendment is important. That's why privacy rights matter, because if we're all a suspect, it changes the nature of what society is, and that's what I'm trying to fight. So anyway, thank you very much for your time. Sir. Fuck yeah, I'm going to finish drinking this beer. How am I going to drink that beer? I barely made it. What? I'm not allowed to run for president because I was born in a foreign country, and as a person who is a naturalized U.S. citizen, let me tell you this very emphatically. I think that it is very good that it's right there, but you can't. I do. I haven't used it one first time. Do I just push down on this? How's this work? That didn't work. Who knows how to use this? Who knows how to use this? Sir? No, you didn't. Very good, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's a very good IPA. I want to recommend this again. This is Rocky Mountain IPA. The Fort Collins Brewery. This is quite good. This is Arrogant Bastard Ale. You're not worthy. Apparently not. Damn. That's good. Highly recommend. I don't remember what I was talking about before. I don't think that naturalized citizens should be allowed to be president of the United States, and I'm a naturalized citizen. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things that I can't do that I think I ought to be able to do. I think I'm a trustable individual. I love the United States of America, and I love its Constitution, and I'm willing to fight for it. But there's this fundamental matter of perspective that is different from me and people who are born here. And if you're going to be president of the United States, if you're going to be someone who so much trust is embodied in, I think that you ought to have the perspective that people who are born here have. And it's something that I can't understand because I wasn't born here.
You can always run for Congress.
I can. And I don't have a problem with congressmen and senators. I mean, it's an intellectual issue at that point. And I think there are very smart people who are very patriotic, like me, who were not born in this country, but live here, who are naturalized citizens, who love this country, who ought to have the ability to participate in the political process. But the president is something else. The president is this very special role that we created in our system that most countries don't have, and a lot of trust is placed in that position. And I think it's very important that person has as a fundamental perspective from birth that they are American. That is, and I can't like put my finger on exactly what it is, but I tell you that I don't think I could fill that role in the way that someone who was born here could fill because of, you know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? Like, there is a difference. There's an importance to that. No, it's not about. She's in it. What about Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? He's a Terminator. Don't you speak ill of him, you'll be killed. I want to say something right now, and look, I apologize. I know that a lot of people came to this conference because they planned to be eaten by aliens, and I apologize. My view is that the aliens are counting in hexadecimal, and this is not, in fact, PhreakNIC 12. But this guy over here, this guy came fucking prepared. And if the shit goes down, all of you motherfuckers are going to be depending on this guy right here for your survival. Okay? So this guy over here, give him a beer because it's probably going to be Saturday. Okay? So tonight is Friday. Give this man a beer because he is going to be saving your ass. He's going to be blasting these aliens while you are cowering in fear like a little pussy tomorrow. And if your life depends upon this man, you should at least make sure he has a good night tonight before he has to, you know, fucking trudge through shit to save your ass tomorrow.
Give one more round of applause.